Hi, I'm Simon Bray, head of EMEA at Kurtosys. We've just wrapped up TSAM London, where there were some strong themes across the event. I'm joined by Sunil Odedra, our Chief Technology Officer, who led the Cyber Resilience panel on day 2, and Andrew Eames, our head of pre-sales, who ran our tech demo, Transforming Investor Communications. Thanks to you both for joining me today. Let's get into it. Sunil, let's start with your session on cyber risk and operational resilience. What, in your view, really stood out on this panel and from the discussions?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. First of all, thank you to the great panelists we had. They provided 3 different perspectives from risk, operations, and technology. But they all landed on the same common theme in that resilience is an organizational challenge and not just technical or not any one department. It's not enough for one team to own the response and requires strong collaboration across the organization and the teams working together, and that works when you have the right culture in your organization as well.
Understood. And where do you think firms are still getting it wrong?
Yeah, we had a great quote. Someone used the Mike Tyson quote that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, and it was applicable here. In that you have plans, you have frameworks, but when something actually happens, then coordination and communication are key. They're the first things that break down, and you really have to continuously test your plans and improve to make sure that all of those things are hanging together. And then beyond that, we also spoke about how the threat landscape is changing. AI is exciting. It's helping us to determine more risks and resolve them faster, but we're also having to keep pace with the shifts in the way that attacks are taking place, from deepfakes to AI-driven phishing. And that's definitely a challenge that firms are having to evolve and keep up with.
Thanks, Sunil. You mentioned communication. That's really interesting, because that actually was something that came across a lot of the sessions that I hosted as well. And what was raised was that clients increasingly expect experiences that are timely, relevant, they expect personalization. But at the same time, I'd say that one of the strongest messages from the event was that this is very much about relationships. It's a relationship-driven market. It requires trust, personal connection, and the human side of client experience was mentioned many times. So the opportunity with technology is not to replace that, but to support it. It helps firms build stronger relationships and deliver with more consistency. Andrew, bringing you in, the Kurtosys demo that you ran, it included new AI features. What were people most interested in?
Thanks, Simon. I think the biggest thing people wanted to see was the practical application, not just the theory. So there was a lot of noise around AI, but what resonated was showing how it actually works in day-to-day practices. Things like real content generation, we're talking about commentary and review, supporting real-world complex data health checks, the sort of things people are manually doing themselves today, and then automating those outputs, so the workflows and the personalized outputs, but just at scale. What was interesting that there's no one is really looking to rip and replace what they currently have. Rather, the focus is on how AI fits into the existing workflows and then improves them. Alongside that, there were a lot of questions around governance, as you might imagine. So how do you ensure accuracy? How do you control the outputs? How do you make sure that you're not introducing new risks while trying to solve the old problems?
Got it. And there's clearly a lot of excitement around AI, but are firms actually changing how they operate yet?
Broadly, I say most firms are still working out how to move from the experimentation into a structured adoption. That came through less as direct feedback in my session and more as a broader theme across the event and in some of the keynote discussions. I think Ed Catton in the plenary session said it well. The challenge is not really the technology on its own, it's data quality, governance, and then getting the organization comfortable about using AI in a controlled, scalable way. So to reiterate, that's the data and then the context. That's what makes it all helpful. So yeah, the shift is less about whether firms are trying AI and more about whether they have the strategy, the methodology, some confidence within the organization to embed it properly into workflows.
So that also connects to what came up on the cyber panel, in that AI isn't just an opportunity, but it's changing the threat landscape at the same time, and it's constantly evolving at a pace that we have to try and keep up with. So one of the practical takeaways from that session was that you can't necessarily prevent every attack, and therefore the focus can also be on how you limit the damage when something does get through. So what are your containment and recovery strategies, not just purely on prevention. So the governance question applies to both sides, using AI to improve your operations, but also defending against it and how it could be used against you as well.
Yeah, that balance really felt like a theme across the whole event, that, you know, technology is advancing quickly, but the goal is still very human. Whether it's client comms, broader engagement reportings, firms want to use technology to help their teams work more efficiently, essentially surface insights faster and stay better connected to clients, with the overarching goal that they can spend more time on the conversations that truly matter. Because technology can support the human interaction, judgment, and trust that sit at the heart of long-term client relationships, it can't replace them. And we think that's especially true in financial services, where, you know, personalization isn't just a tactic or a buzzword, it's a real expectation. In the marketing sessions, that same pressure really came through, I think, but from a different angle. Teams are dealing with increasingly more channels, but I think are seeing pressure on or working without more resources. So the challenge there isn't what can we do, it's how we prioritize what actually drives impact.
Yeah, it's the same on the technology side. The question increasingly isn't what can we build, but it's what should we prioritize. Most firms have more initiatives than actual capacity, and the ones that are really making progress are the ones making choice about what not to do, so they can do the important things properly.
Yeah, it's a mix. But the most successful ones are having that harder strategic conversation. They're realizing that if you don't prune the activity, you just end up with noise rather than commercial impact. So I think it's about making deliberate choices to scale what actually works. And then in areas like RFPs, reporting, and client communications, automation is clearly moving things forward. There's real progress being made with centralized data, content libraries, AI-driven workflows. But the reality is that a lot of the processes are still surprisingly manual.
Yeah, we see that manual wall a lot in pre-sales and honestly in our implementations too. But based on your discussion, Simon, where is that tension between efficiency and quality felt the most? Is it in the data itself, or the fear of losing that human touch with client communication?
Yeah, definitely both, Andrew. Firms are realizing that the output is really only ever as good as the underlying content library. They have to rethink not just the tools, but how they govern and maintain the information that everything else depends on. You can't automate excellence if the foundation is messy. But stepping back, one thing that really stood out, especially from the two panels Patrick McKenna, our Chief Commercial Officer, hosted, is how much the conversation has shifted from AI as a concept to AI as execution. And in the marketing panel, it was clear the challenges and whether to use AI anymore. It's how you embed it into workflows, connected to the right data, and scale it into a governed, repeatable way. And then in the investor communications panel, there was a strong focus on trust, how it's built or lost through communication. Most breakdowns still come back to data quality, complexity, and inconsistent processes. So across both, the message was pretty consistent. The technology is there, but getting the foundations right is what really matters. Sunil, Andrew, if we step back, what's the one theme that really cuts across everything we've talked about this week?
Yeah, I think you've already said it in that the technology is there, but it's really organizational readiness. We have the technology, whether that's AI automation or traditional security tooling. The gap is in if an organization can execute when that matters, and that comes down to culture, collaboration, and really focusing on about which areas you're ready in and where you're not, and what requires more focus.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I'd add that there is also a clear gap between plans and sometimes reality. Technology is there, the AI automation against those data platforms, but adoption, I think we see it, it's uneven. The firms that move the fastest will be the ones that can operationalize these capabilities and not just talk about them.
Final question. If you're a senior leader watching this, what's the one thing you should focus on next? Sunil?
Yep, it's again, readiness. Don't just plan for resilience, prove it. Test your response with your teams and your vendors, and that's where you'll find out what actually works and what needs improvement.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Move beyond the experimentation with AI, pick a few high impact use cases, embed them properly in those workflows, and I think that's where you start to see the real value.
If there's one message from TSAM, it's this. The gap between expectation and execution, that's where the real work is now. Thanks to both for your time and looking forward to the next TSAM.